You know how when you get to the center of a cinnamon roll and it's just all ooey and gooey and moist and it's all stuck together? That is my favorite part. And this recipe that I'm going to show you today has most of it tasting just like that, the inside of a cinnamon roll. That is why I love this recipe, besides the fact that it is one of the most beautiful things you can make this time of year. It became one of those things that was a lot easier than I thought it was. You just have to know how to do it. My kids watched me put one of these together, and it was funny because it was all this big circle, and they saw me start to cut out these just slices in it, and they were saying, "Oh no, that's not a snowflake, that's not a snowflake." And within like 3 seconds, just because I did, you know, this one step, all of a sudden you start hearing, "Whoa, it's a snowflake, it's a snowflake." So this is an overnight recipe, and I was really tired actually when I made this recipe. So I made this late. I had an early morning appointment for a procedure at the Children's Hospital just that same day, and so I was totally done, but I still took the time to just throw this dough together. And that is one thing I love about making bread overnight, is that you just put the dough together, put it in the bowl, and you don't have much else to worry about. So I went ahead and used my active sourdough starter, which I generally feed my sourdough starter with a whole grain einkorn, because the whole grain tends to feed the organisms better, and I will switch back and forth, especially if I want something with a much lighter flavor rather than the whole grain flavor. You can also check out my how to make an einkorn sourdough starter video, which has a lot of information on kind of the science of how it works as well, and how to just start your own using just the flour and the water. After the sourdough starter, I like to add in my warm water. And then I follow with the flour and the salt and the sugar. I'm using cane sugar. You don't have to use cane sugar. You can use a different type of sugar for this if you would like. And yes, I am using a butter knife to mix this all together. I do things not always in the most professional manner, and that's okay. Then I cover the just mixed dough and I leave it here for 10 minutes or so while I brush my teeth. It needs that sitting time for it to actually come together. It's so much more dense than modern day flour that you're used to using maybe, and that stuff will just mix together and it'll absorb that moisture fast. This stuff is going to need a little bit more time, so you'll want to give it about 10 minutes or so. I pull it out onto a floured surface, and then I fold it about 4, 5, 6 times, and roll it back into a ball, put it back into the proofing basket or banneton, and I cover it with a damp cloth, and then I leave it overnight to rise. Now, it's a lot cooler this time of year for us, and so rise times will be a little bit longer. If you are in a warm climate, your rise time will be probably closer to 8 hours. Mine was about 12 hours. And I have to warn you, I think I rose this one a little bit too long. You'll notice when I come in the next day that some things happened that were not supposed to happen. And because of that, I had some I didn't have as easy of a time making the snowflake. I decided to leave that in the video though, so that you could get an idea of just that fact that I don't always do things perfectly either. And if things go wrong, you can always make the best of it. My snowflake actually turned out pretty well still, even though this did not go as planned. Dough has been sitting overnight. It's been about 12-ish hours, I think. And I let it rise just in my proofing basket. And I'm going to turn it out, and then we will divide it up. But I have been loving this proofing basket because I used to always just scrape the dough out of my glass bowls. and it was a lot messier than I liked, but you know, I just did it and that was fine because I was just kind of getting into it. And I really think it's great when you're just learning something to not get a ton of equipment and just kind of learn the ins and outs of it before getting all these fancy things. Not that this is super fancy, but I feel like, okay, now I know that this is something I want to do constantly, and so things like this I'm valuing now, and so I'm gonna just turn this over. I'll move the camera so you can see a little better. Tighten that up. Okay. That just comes right out, and the nice thing about this is that I can just take out the cloth and wash it. I don't have to wash it in the sink with my other dishes. That it's actually not making more dishes for me, so I love that. I'm gonna just cut this like so. I have another loaf that I made in the oven right now. So I've got 4 about equal sizes. And the proofing basket I got, well, I have this size also. This size is their oval basket. That's what I did my bread in, that's in the oven right now. But this one is the one that I would say I use most, just because it is like the basic circle shape. And I got this from Cooey Housewares, and they are giving 10% off for orders right now. You can look in the information box below, and I'll leave that link for you if you guys are looking for kitchen items to help out with your baking. They are a wonderful source, so I'll leave that for you. Okay, so I've got my 10-inch pie plate. This is going to help me measure, and I'm just gonna do a little bit of folding, work the dough a little bit, use my flour here, sprinkle a little bit more on here, and then we'll go ahead and roll it out. I thought this part was going to be the hardest part, to get the exact circle. Like, I was kind of worried about that. That is what scared me the most. But I found that actually rolling a circle is pretty simple if you're just going back and forth and changing, you know, about 90 degrees. That rolling out a circle is pretty simple. But here's the other thing, if it's not even perfect, which mine is not going to be, you can already tell that I've got these little hills, I'll call them hills, on the side. Roll it out a little bit bigger than you need it. This is the secret. And then you're gonna put your pie plate on it. This doesn't have to be exact, so I don't actually put the pie plate right on it, but I just kind of measure, and then you can kind of push it in. So here's the thing about dough, is that you can't necessarily stretch it bigger very easily once it's already done, but you can push it in a little bit. So now I'm gonna just soften up those spots, and that one is good. So helps if you are starting with a ball. That's also a great way to get your circle to be a little bit more exact. A little bit stickier than the last one, so you're going to put it over on parchment paper, and you will need about 5 of these pieces of parchment. So I've got that one, and put that one at the bottom plate and just measure it. I think that's pretty close here. Let's see, we're just about there. So what happened here that I had not planned out was that I forgot to flour my parchment paper the next day. I am supposed to, I should say, you're supposed to flour both the dough when you roll it into the circle and then go ahead and flour the parchment paper. But I did not flour the parchment paper, and so that, in combination with the fact that I think it did rise a little bit too long, causing it to be a little bit more sticky, both of those things just made it way harder to get off of the parchment paper. So remember that when you're rolling out the dough into circles and putting it onto the parchment paper and then layering them on top of each other, you should really have flour both on the bottom where you're putting the dough circle, and then on top of the dough before you add the next sheet of parchment paper onto it. And this will make sure that you're able to peel the parchment off when you are spreading the filling on and then layering the dough on top of each other. So once you roll your dough out into the circles and you get the layers of dough, parchment paper, all the way up to the top, you'll end with your last circle of dough. You'll make sure to flour that, and then you're going to want to put another piece of parchment paper on top. After you're done with that, go ahead and put your damp cloth on top. A tea towel is probably one of the best ones you can use, just a very light cloth. And then you'll leave it there for about 1 to 2 hours. About a half an hour before you're ready to put this into the oven, you're going to turn the oven on to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you'll get your filling ingredients together. Then we'll do 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. If you don't like yours that cinnamony, go down to 1.5 tablespoons. But I like a lot of cinnamon flavor in there. And then we're going to do 1 cup of sugar. You could do any type of dark sugar for this. So I like to use coconut sugar. It's got high mineral content and it has great flavor. But you could use brown sugar. You could use maple sugar, sucanat. Is that how you say it? I can never say that right. But anything that is a dark, rich sugar. Date sugar might be good. I'm not sure of what the ratio would be because some sugars, will have different amounts. But for today, I am using coconut sugar to the butter. This actually turned out really good. Even though I thought I softened the butter up too much, it is nice and creamy, which is how you want it, so it's spreadable. Once you get the filling all mixed up, go ahead and divide it into 3 equal parts so that you'll know each part goes onto 1 circle of dough and between each other as you're putting the layers on top of each other. Okay, once we have put our filling onto our circle of dough, we're going to put the next circle on top of that filling. And then we will go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to put the next 3rd part of the filling and spread it all over the next circle of dough. And so now we've got 2 layers on top of each other. And then you'll go ahead and spread the next filling on top of that layer of dough and add in your, how many is that? You're going to do it having 3 layers with filling on them, and then you'll finally cover the last filling with your top piece of dough circle. At this point, you're going to want to find either a cup or you could use like a small mason jar. The smaller side I think is better than going towards the bigger side as far as the size of your glasses. And I like to just put that right in the middle so it will mark where the middle of that circle is for me, and then you can take it off. It doesn't take pushing down or anything. The mark just comes very easily. And then you're going to get a knife. I like to do this on a cutting board, so I'll transfer using the parchment paper underneath the very bottom of it. I'll transfer it to a cutting board. and then I will cut the circle in quarters, only up to where I put that round cup. So you don't want to cut all the way through the dough. You want to stop where that round circle mark is in the middle. And so you have going out from that circle 4 different cuts, making 4 quarters in the dough. Once you've got those 4 done, you're going to do 4 more in between each of those first cuts to make 8 cuts total. And once you have 8 cuts, it's going to become 16 by going in between each one of the cuts you have and making 1 more cut. Now once you have the final 16 cuts in this dough, you are ready to make your snowflake. This is the most exciting part. It's okay if you feel a little nervous, because I was extremely nervous when I first did this. It's okay. Believe me, it's a lot more simple than you think. So you're going to take 2 pieces of those slices that you did right next to each other, and you're going to twist them away from each other. You'll twist them around 2 to 3 times. I like to do, I think I do 3 times to make sure there are 2 twists that you can see visually in the dough. And then you'll take the edges and make sure to pinch the edges together nice and tight, because otherwise they will come apart while you're baking. And you're going to do the same thing with the next 2 sections. And then you'll go all the way around that circle, and each 2 pieces will become one of those snowflake branches. Once you've done this, you can transfer your parchment paper with that snowflake to a baking sheet. I like to actually put another piece of parchment paper underneath just in case I cut through while I was cutting the slices. And then, and also, just so you know, you should make sure that your baking sheet has edges on it, because some of the butter filling will start to ooze out during baking, and you don't want it to ooze out into your oven. So make sure that you do put an extra piece of parchment underneath and use like a good rimmed baking sheet. You're going to put this in your oven at 400 degrees for 20 to 24 minutes. And once it is slightly brown, you'll notice a little bit of brown in the middle and on the edges. You can take that baby out. And man, this looks beautiful when it comes out, but you'll see a lot of oozing, and that's normal. Go ahead and just let it cool for a few minutes before moving that parchment paper over to a cooling rack. And then once it's cooled for, I would say, about 15-20 minutes, you can start to pull off the filling that's oozed out, because it will harden up, and then you can just take that off and it'll visually look a lot better. And then you can also transfer it. I like to put a plate on top of it, flip it over, and then put a serving plate on top of that back side and turn it back over onto the serving plate, if that makes sense. Okay, at this point, it is time to finish up your snowflake by simply adding icing or powdered sugar to it. I like to sift powdered sugar on it, but I do love the flavor of icing, especially cream cheese icing with this snowflake. It's the cinnamon and the butter all together. I just think it works so well together with it. Now you can see here that my snowflake that I struggled with, it still turned out great. I don't know that I would say it was Pinterest worthy because the symmetry of that little star area in the center was a little flattened. It wasn't quite symmetrical. But honestly, if I saw this at a potluck, at an event during Christmas time, I would just think it looked so amazing, wouldn't you? So don't worry about little things that happen, like if things start to stick more or you're having trouble cutting through them because they are so sticky. Try to work around that and know that a lot of the time these baked goods will still turn out pretty well, even when you're struggling with them. My second one, it did turn out a little better. Once again, it's not perfect, but honestly, man, I just think these are so beautiful. I hope you guys will decide to try this out because my kids have put it way up there, maybe even higher than the traditional cinnamon roll, and they love cinnamon rolls, but they want to do this around Christmas. I will probably end up doing this. I don't know. It's hard to choose between cinnamon rolls and this, but we'll see. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this recipe. Let me know if you have any questions. You can get this recipe as a printable recipe on the website hilltopinthevalley.com. I'll also put the link below so you can just click on that. You can also get other winter einkorn recipes in my ebook that's available now. It's only available for a short time during this season. So I'll also put the link for that in the box below. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful Christmas season. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.